Okay, so as you can see, I'm out here on the water, and this is going to be, I guess, one of several videos I'm going to be filming of the new 2024 Shimano Metanium DC. Now, is this new Metanium mighty? Well, we're going to find out. Now, in this video, this is going to be, I guess, a casting impression / brake tutorial video where I go through all the line modes, find the limits, maybe cast a couple of different types of lures. And it's basically just to show you guys how these brakes work. Then, of course, in future videos, this reel is going to go into battle. So let's get started. Now, the rod I'm using is the JDM Shimano BANTAM 6'8" medium, moderate fast. And as you can see, the silver and black of the BANTAM just looks incredible with the silver and black Metanium. And the Metanium out in the sunlight, wow. The deep shiny black, and I think it probably is almost just as black as the 2017 Scorpion DC. Then of course I'm using 10-pound monofilament. Okay, so the first lure we're throwing is going to be a Head & Chug & Spook Jr. I believe it weighs about ½ an ounce, maybe a little bit over. And it's time to set this reel up. And that of course means adjusting the spool tension. Now with DC reels, I kind of treat them like DAIWA SV reels, where I want maybe just a hint of side-to-side play and just let the brakes do all the work. Now I didn't bring it up in the unboxing video, but not surprisingly, the spool tension knob on the Metanium DC does not click, but it is very smooth. Kind of hard to access though, but I'm going to leave just a little bit of side-to-side play. Now here's some advice for all you guys that have Shimano reels that have the silent tune that uses the O-rings, that it's kind of hard to gauge side-to-side play with the silent tune O-rings. So you may want to work at it, but there, I just have just a hint of side-to-side play. And since we're using monofilament, we're going to start off in nylon or monofilament mode, which is where it was at. And we're going to crank the fine-tuning adjustment to maximum. And let's cast. And I hope this line is strong enough for me to be able to do some forceful casts and not snap this lure off, because it's the only one I got. But here we go. Oh man. So in nylon or monofilament mode, fine tuning set to maximum, I just barely did a sidearm cast just to let the line settle, and it went out there way farther than I thought. Now Shimano claims this IDC5 is tuned with a firmware that I guess is adjusted to the fast startup of these MGL3 spools. But as you can see, during the cast, no problems. But I do have to stop the spool with my thumb once the lure hits the water. Man, that's already at least 35 yards. Wow, okay. All right, let's do an overhead cast. Jeez, that's approaching 40 yards right there. Not even casting my hardest. I probably won't, because I'm scared to break this lure off. But now obviously you can hear the famous DC song. Oh man. So we're talking close to 40 yards with the maximum fine tuning on the, I guess, fine tuning dial or latch. So let's go down one to, I guess, what would be number 4. Oh, wow. I was watching the spool and wasn't watching the lure, and this is bad. I might have to pick this out off camera, if that's even possible. Now, while I'm trying to pick this out, I'm gonna answer, I guess, one of the more popular questions I saw in the comments of the unboxing video. That is, do I think Shimano will come out with a 150 spool size version of this reel? And that is a possibility. I don't know if it's going to be 150, maybe 100 capacity, but that would definitely be welcome. Oh my God, how did it get this bad? But what they would have to do is probably give us a taller spool. So something like 35 millimeters possibly instead of 34. Now they could widen the spool. There's plenty of space in the frame that they can machine out material to make the spool wider, but I don't know, that kind of defeats the purpose of the MGL3 spool, which is purposely supposed to be narrower. So if they do come out with the 100 size or 150 spool size version of this reel, it's probably not going to be for at least a few more years. At least that's my opinion. Now, of course, Shimano's been pretty radical in the last few years, so they, you know, they may prove me wrong. Man, I'm gonna have to pick this out off camera. This is bad. Okay, I'm back. And that overrun was so bad that I actually had to cut the line off and restring. So yeah, this spool on this 24 Metanium DC is really, really fast, and it's definitely not to be underestimated. So with that being said, this small bit of side-to-side play, I'm gonna eliminate that. All right, so still a fast fall, as you can see. But let's start casting again. So I am getting overrun the back end of the cast with the fine-tuning latch set to what would normally be 4. So for those of you who are, I don't know, what you would call beginners, or you may have a, you know, a CURADO DC or SLX DC with the simpler IDC4 brakes, you may want to keep these factors in mind if you're considering pulling the trigger on this new 24 Metanium DC. All right, let's do an overhead. So wow, once again, overrun on the back half of the cast. So I could thumb the spool all the way through the cast and eliminate that, but you know, this is what brakes are for, so you don't have to do any thumbing. So this is definitely different than what I remember of the SLX DC XT. That reel is extremely beginner friendly. And let's go back to maximum. Doesn't look like we can go any lower on the brakes, at least in the nylon mode. Okay, so that was at least a 40-yard cast there. But interesting that I can't go any lower. I cannot go any lower on the fine tuning. Now with the old Metanium DC, I remembered I could go probably down to 3 or 2 on its brakes, but maybe it's this line. The line that I have could be a factor. I mean, it's not the most quality line out there, but it does cast pretty well. But yeah, very shocking that I can't go any lower than, I guess, 1 adjustment on this fine-tuning latch. Let's go back down to 4. Let's see. Maybe the line just needs to settle. Damn. Okay, full disclosure, I thumbed the spool probably halfway through the cast on the very back end, or it definitely would have blew up, but that is close to a 50-yard cast right there. All right, we'll do one more. So hopefully you guys are seeing where this is landing. I'm gonna do a few more just in case. And then we're gonna live dangerously and go one more click down. Now luckily the wind has stopped, but let's go. So yeah, I'm thumbing through the second half of the cast in order to keep this spool from blowing up. Okay, we'll do one more. Yeah, these are like 50-yard casts, and this is how much line is left on the spool. Cast at about, I would say a little bit more than half of its line off. Now while I got this lure out there, let me see if I can do some walk the dog action. And yeah, this reel is light enough for me to be able to do this without immediately feeling fatigue or pain in my wrist. Okay, so let's go down one setting on the fine tuning latch, and that would be normally number 3. Now I fully expect the spool to blow up, so I'm going to thumb this thing all the way through. Okay, and that just happened. So it looks like on my backstroke, the lure hit a rock and broke in half. Wow, what a day. What a day. It's the kind of stuff that you have to deal with when you're doing these testing videos. Luckily, the spool did not explode though. Let's see what the damage is. And it looks like it just broke off. All right, time for me to find another lure. Okay, so the show must go on, and I found another lure in my car. This is a Strike King Dog Junior, I think is what it's called. I'm pretty sure it's around 1/2 ounce. Another topwater pencil lure, and I'll try to be more careful. Here we go. So wow, even thumbing the spool lightly during the whole cast, it still blew up a little bit. Let's do one more. Okay, put a little bit more pressure on the spool that time. No blow up. You can see the distance, you know, is at least 20 foot short of the number 4 brake setting with very light thumbing. So this is crazy. All right, I'm going to check one thing. One thing that can happen with these Shimano reels that have the silent tune. That is, I'm going to take the spool out, kind of break that seal that the silent tune makes, and readjust my spool tension. So if you have a Shimano reel that has the silent tune, that has the O-rings, I found this out with a 2018 Bantam that sometimes it creates this vacuum where the spool will not move, but yet you can loosen the spool tension all the way, even take it off completely, and the spool will still not move because it's kind of stuck there, but it will cause your reel to blow up. So basically you have to reset it, pull the spool out, break the seal, put it back in, and redo everything. Okay, so I've clicked the fine tuning latch to maximum, and we'll do a few casts with this Dog Junior lure. And yeah, I mean, we're looking at still close to 40 yards, but I was hoping to be able to go deeper into these breaks. Now, of course, your mileage might vary, so your experience may be different, but you're seeing it here firsthand out on the water. Literally the only 2 castable fine-tuned settings are maximum or 4, and I've turned it back to 4. So yep, the spool wanted to blow up on the tail end of the cast, had to thumb it. So any of you owners of the 24 Metanium DC that are watching this, let me know if you're experiencing the same thing in the comments. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we are going to try the different line modes. So just because I have nylon or monofilament on doesn't mean I can't cast in the other line modes, at least with the other IDC5 brakes. Now it might be different with this Metanium, but I'm going to fluorocarbon. Fine tuning latch set to maximum. Let's cast. Okay, clean cast there. Let's do an overhead. So just in case you're wondering what the difference is between the line modes, fluorocarbon tends to give you the strongest brakes. And then I found that nylon or monofilament mode is kind of in the middle, and braid mode tends to give you the least braking for potentially the longest casts. So let's see if we can go to number 4 in fluorocarbon mode. Perfect. Okay, we'll do one more with the external dial set to 4. Okay, spool perfect during the cast. Forgot to stop it with my thumb. So now let's go to number 3, or what would be 3. Okay, spool perfectly controlled. Maybe like a loop I saw towards the tail end of the cast. Let's do one more. Perfect spool control. Now the distance is not quite 50 yards in my estimation, but we're going to go down to number 2. Now there's some wind coming in. Look at that, perfect. Except for me not stopping the spool with my thumb. So this fluorocarbon mode may be the ticket, unless you're using braid. And what I plan to do is I plan to try to find some cheap 20-pound braid on eBay so we can get into these future cast battles. All right, we'll do one more. Look at that, perfect spool control in fluorocarbon mode with the fine tuning set to 2. Okay, so now we're going to go to minimum and see if we can cast in the lowest brake setting in fluorocarbon. Okay, so I'll admit that I did feather the spool with my thumb. Did not want to have another blow up so bad that I'd have to re-spool and everything. But it was pretty controllable. Let's cast out this way. Got a wind coming to my back. Okay, so you saw that there was some fluffing there. Okay, let's do a sidearm. So yep, still had to thumb it, so it very much reminds me of nylon mode with the fine tuning set to 4. So if you are a beginner and for some reason you think you want to get one of these reels, I would definitely recommend you start out in fluorocarbon mode until you understand the characteristics of this spool. Kind of understanding what Shimano did now with this reel to separate it from lesser reels like the SLX DC XT. So now let's go to braid mode. Then we're going to crank up fine tuning to maximum. Now this should provide us with the least amount of breaks because braid is easier to cast. At least some of them are. And we do have a wind coming in from my left to my right. It's pretty strong. And actually that's gonna give us a good opportunity to throw this Metanium DC into the wind. I put it to fluorocarbon and we're gonna cast directly into this wind. Boom. Still got a good at least 30, 32 or 33 yard cast. I don't know if you guys can hear the wind. Let's cast into it again. Okay, we're gonna go down one click on the fine tuning latch. The wind's definitely kicked up. Look at that. Perfect, except for me not stopping the spool when the lure hit the water. So when you hear people like me saying that these reels can't be touched when it comes to fishing in the wind, this is why. Now, any reel can be locked down to throw into a headwind, but I'm doing this with an overhead cast and pretty much a loose spool tension. We're gonna go down one more click on the fine tuning. Look at that. So for example, of course, DAIWA SP reels, which I find be overbreak and cast into wind, but they're not gonna cast this far into a headwind. overhead. You still have to lock those reels down to a certain extent. Okay, one more. Okay, so now let's go test this braid mode. And it is so convenient to be able to just flip the reel over and flip a latch instead of pulling the side plate off. That alone may be worth switching out your old Metaniums for these new ones. But braid mode in maximum. And we still got wind. Here we go. Okay, all right. Maybe nylon mode is the least braked mode. It's kind of been a question, you know, which is the least braked line mode, nylon or braid? And usually for me, I found it to be braid. Okay, that was a bad cast on my part. We'll do one more and then we'll go down on the fine tuning. Boom, that was a long cast, at least 40 yards. Okay, we'll go down one click. Okay, so it reminds me of the nylon mode, but the overrun kicked in a little bit sooner. Yeah, we're definitely going to test the braid mode out with braid in a future video, but this is just getting a feel of these brakes and showing you guys what each line mode would do. And the fact that you can use any line mode you want with any line. You're not limited to braid and braid mode, fluoro and fluoro mode, mono and nylon mode. Okay, so we got a really good wind coming in. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna flip the line mode to fluorocarbon. Cast right into it. I know you couldn't see where that landed probably, but perfect spool control. Okay, so I flip back to braid mode. We just do a couple more casts and then we're going to do some measurements with the line counter. Yeah, the overrun is more severe in braid mode, so it looks like braid mode is the least braked. Okay, so hopefully you guys have been watching and learning and seeing that this new 2024 Metanium DC appears to be not quite as beginner friendly as a lot of other Shimano's DC reels, which I totally understand. Okay guys, so as you can see, we switched spots, and what I'm going to do here to, I guess, end off this video is take my line counter and I'm going to do a few casts in each line mode with the fine tuning set to maximum and see just how much of, I guess, a difference in distance we can measure between the two. Of course, this is not going to be nearly as accurate as going out on the field, but that's going to come later in a different video. So let's get started. So I'm going to start off in nylon mode, and once again, fine tuning is set to maximum. I'm going to try to keep these casts as clean as possible, and here we go. Dang. Okay, so that looked to be about a 35-yard cast. Now keep in mind, this measures how much line was cast out, not the actual distance. So the numbers are going to be inflated, but according to the line counter, 127 feet. Okay, here we go. Wow, according to the line counter, that went almost 138 feet. Now there was some wind going from my right to my left, but it says 138 feet. All right, we'll do one more. Now that one didn't look like it went too far. Okay, so according to the line counter, it went 125 feet. So about the same as the first cast. Okay, so now let's flip it to fluorocarbon mode. Here we go. Well, that looked like it went there about 35 yards. Let's see what this line counter says. Okay, according to the line counter, 116 feet of line went out. So about 10 foot short. All right, let's do 2 more. Now you can definitely feel that the spool is faster in the braid and nylon modes. Okay, 109 feet. Okay, last cast in fluoro mode. Okay, so according to the line counter, 107 feet. So definitely fluorocarbon mode, we are losing at least a minimum of 10 foot. Now, of course, if you lower the fine tuning latch to the lower settings, you can make up for that. But now let's go to braid. Now this should give us the longest cast. Here we go. So visually, that definitely looked farther than fluorocarbon mode, but let's see what this line counter says. Whoa, 134 feet. It's only 4 foot shy of that twin-aided nylon mode cast. Okay, here we go. Okay, much better. $133 feet on that cast. Okay, last cast in braid mode. Okay, that one looked a little short. Nope, 134 feet. So in braid mode, we got a consistent 133 to 134 feet. So I guess to end off this video, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna cast around in fluorocarbon mode. And I guess I'm gonna just sum up my initial thoughts and impressions of this new Metanium DC. So obviously, the fluorocarbon mode is the shortest casting line mode, or the most braked, and then monofilament or nylon mode, and then braid mode. And I suspect if we took this reel out to the casting field and did some measurements, you'd probably be looking at an average of about 10 foot between each line mode. So of course fluorocarbon would be the shortest casting, and then by going to nylon you probably gain another 10 foot, and then switching over to braid you probably gain almost another 10 foot. But the reel has, I guess the resistance in turning the handle has definitely decreased. It's gotten easier to turn this handle, and the reel is of course smooth as butter. But when I was driving over here and remembering, you know, the casting video I did of the new or the latest Scorpion DC, then of course the SLX DC XT, I mean, those reels were just so user friendly, therefore making them beginner friendly. But with this Metanium, I think Shimano did something with the firmware tuning to, I guess, make it cast better, or ultimately probably farther than those other two reels, if you have the experience to do so. Reminds me very much of the ANTARES DC. That reel is definitely not a beginner's DC reel, but I think the ultimate performance ceiling on this reel is going to be higher than that of the lesser priced Scorpion and SLX, which, to be honest, it should be that way, because this reel is like almost double the cost of the SLX DC and probably another $100 over the Scorpion. But that's just my initial impressions. If you do decide to get one and you're really not that comfortable with bait casters, just leave it in fluorocarbon mode and you'll be fine. So there we go, guys. The new 2024 Metanium DC. I personally don't think I've reached the limits of this reel just yet. You probably need braided line to do that. And when I do the cast comparison against the old Metanium DC, I probably will use braid. So if you have one of these reels, let me know in the comments on what your experience is. Is it the same as mine, or was your reel more tame somehow? But anyway, once again, be on the lookout for more videos on this reel, as well as videos on the new TATULA BF70, which I got a few days ago. All right, guys, thanks a lot.